It says it's streaming on YouTube now, Jason.
Oh, great. Okay, excellent. The streaming's working. Sheryl, we still can't see you.
Well, I don't see a place. Ooh, what happened?
At the bottom of the screen, is there like a...
There should be a place where I can live on with video, right? But I'm not seeing it. And
in the bottom left, there should be a little video camera icon.
Yeah, I don't see it. Let me.
Is your camera on?
My camera's lit up. Let me see. Uh-oh. Let me try this again. Okay, open. I'm doing launch meeting. Okay. Now I see you. I see a mic. It's on mute. What is this? Is more. I just don't see the camera.
Huh, it's usually next to the mic.
I know, but I just don't. I don't see the camera.
If worse comes to worse, maybe we should just start the meeting soon anyway.
Yeah.
And we can just talk.
It's not ideal, but
yeah, I mean, we can start now, or if you want to try logging out and logging back into the meeting, you could try that really quickly. It's up to you.
Let me try that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Stavros.
Hi, Stavros.
Afternoon.
Oh, here's Cheryl's back. Okay, let's see.
And I'm joining you now, right?
No luck?
You can hear me now, right?
We can hear you, yeah.
I just can't find the camera.
Okay, well, I think we should begin.
Yeah.
If you see it during,
okay,
turn it on, but you know, people can hear you talk.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to admit people. Hello, welcome everybody. We are very excited to have this particular event of the Night News Visiting Journalist Series because we're welcoming back Sheryl McCarthy, who, in addition to having an enormous amount of experience in both print journalism and broadcast news, was also journalism faculty at Queens College and advisor for the Night News during a very crucial time. So we're super excited to have her here. This is a co-production with the Queens Podcast Lab. The Queens Podcast Lab is an open educational project that hosts a variety of podcasts, including QC Pod, which is largely hosted by QC students. And our mission is to help students gain experience in media that can lead to professional opportunities. And we have a number of student producers, and some of them are here. Also here is Johnny Sullivan, who is editor-in-chief of the Night News. And I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce Sheryl. I'll just let you know we are live streaming to YouTube. So hello to all of you watching on YouTube. And we have a really nice turnout. So I say Johnny's going to ask some questions, but we're going to open it up to the group. And Sheryl has a lot to say and a lot of experience. And I know a lot of you are really curious about careers in journalism. So I encourage you to ask some questions. Cheryl's having some trouble with her camera, so we may or may not see her, but we will definitely hear her and listen to her wisdom. So Johnny, I give it to you.
Thank you, Jason. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the Queen's Podcast Lab, without whom this event wouldn't have been possible. But even more fervent gratitude is reserved for Sheryl, who has been nothing but gracious, generous with her time, both in the past and in organizing this event. If it were possible to condense, oh, we can see Sheryl now. Wonderful.
Oh.
Perfect timing.
Oh, there's the top
Excellent.
of my head.
That
Oh,
worked out
right.
perfectly.
Cooking with gas.
Awesome.
Okay.
And just in the nick of time, too.
Right.
So if it were possible to condense Sheryl's litany of achievements into a paragraph, well, it wouldn't be possible, but this is what we came up with, and the panel will be the better for trying. So Sheryl McCarthy, among, again, her litany of achievements, has been a reporter for the Boston Globe, the New York Daily News, and Newsday. She was a television correspondent for ABC News. Like Jason said, she was previously the faculty advisor for the Night News and a staunch advocate for journalism on campus at a time when support for journalism as a curriculum was flagging elsewhere, but we'll get into that later. So again, well, first off, I'll admit that my personal experience with Sheryl was tangential at best. I submitted one article in the fall of 2019, and I received pretty lengthy criticism for it. But I'm very thankful to Sheryl for having provided me with this very necessary wake-up call.
Hope it was constructive criticism.
Always, and it helped me refine my practice. So I express my gratitude for Sheryl because that helped me get to be where I am now. So I guess without further ado, we'll start off the round of questioning by asking you about your career. So one of the things I want to highlight is the very necessary wake-up call.
Hope it was.
Jason, I think when I talk, the audio.
I just disabled the volume on.
Got it. Okay, so the law degree you received from Columbia University. I'm wondering, did you pursue that degree with journalism in mind?
Yes, I did. I never intended to practice law. And what I say to students often, well, one piece of advice I offer is when in the course of your career, if you find yourself in a rut, either in a job that you don't like or in a place that you don't like or whatever, take some positive steps to get out of the rut. And sometimes that can be very dramatic. At the time that I applied to law school, I was writing for the Baltimore Evening Sun. Job was fine, but I hated Baltimore and wanted to get back to New York. And I already had a master's degree, but other people I had gone to college with were some were going on for their third degree. I didn't want to get left behind. And basically, if you ask me the short answer to why did I apply to law school, it was I wanted to get a degree that would make people take me seriously as a journalist or whatever I might be doing. It seemed that a law degree seemed to be, women in particular who had law degrees seemed to have a certain amount of confidence, and people took them seriously. And I also thought of the law degree as sort of a basic degree on how the world works, beyond your Bachelor of Arts. And so I applied to law school. I figured I only applied to one law school, that was Columbia. Because it was in New York, I wanted to get back to New York, and I had full intention of going back into journalism after I got my law degree, and that's what I did.
So with the long and storied common history that law and journalism share as practices, how would you say that your your expertise in law has informed the manner in which you go about researching, producing articles, and doing everything related to the journalistic practice?
That is a good question. Not something that I had thought about. But I'll just say one, you need to have a certain amount of confidence in journalism to talk to people and to pursue stories, to research stories. And I think the um, gives you that, because if you can get through 3 years of law school, you're kind of tough. um, and I never, even though I had a law degree, I never covered the courts. I never necessarily, was on a legal beat where I was writing about the law. But, legal issues come up all the time. And, if you have the degree, if you're familiar with the terminology, you understand them, you're not frightened by them. And so it winds up being a very practical degree for a journalist. And there are, I think more and more, I've worked with, at Newsday and other places, I've worked with reporters or editors who had law degrees. And it's just very helpful in understanding how the world works and understanding, the legal terminology. And it just, again, I think it gives you confidence and makes people take you seriously.
So if I have this right, you came on to the Newsday staff in the 1980s as its first female columnist.
Right.
And evidently, as you say, this law degree that you obtained is something that you felt would help you get a leg up on other applicants and maybe would lend you some legitimacy as a female journalist. Did you feel that you still struggled to be taken seriously, or did you feel that you were pretty much accepted from day one?
Well, I remember, certainly every newspaper that I've been on a 4 or 5, there was always a group of the women's group, and there was always the Black group. And I remember, advocating for that group's, success and to be, looked at and to promote it and all of those things. And I remember the women's group at New York Newsday. I came to New York Newsday from ABC as a senior writer. And we were meeting, the women's group was meeting with management, and management was agonizing over the fact that it did not have a Black columnist, at least at New York Newsday. We had Les Payne out at Long Island Newsday. And they were agonizing, we're looking for a Black columnist, and we've been looking around, and we wish we could have Bob Herbert, but he doesn't want to leave the Daily News, and we'd like to get a woman columnist. And I said, okay, what is the big deal? What is the big deal? If you don't have to try to steal Bob Herbert from the Daily News. If you want a Black columnist, report one of the Black reporters on the paper who is a good writer and who has a certain amount of maturity, and you have a Black columnist. If you want a woman columnist, you don't have to do a national search, just promote one of the women reporters at New York Newsday who is a good writer and has a certain amount of maturity, and you'll have a woman columnist. These white guys who are agonizing over this kind of stuff. And it really is not difficult. Shortly thereafter, they offered me the job of columnist at New York Newsday. So I became, I guess, the first Black columnist at New York Newsday and the first woman columnist. But, and I was not agitating for it, but I was just sort of speaking common sense, and I guess they took my advice.
So, do you feel that maybe the paradigm has sort of changed today? Do you feel that such that sticking your neck out wouldn't have been necessary today, or do you feel that there's still this sort of unease when it comes to these things?
Well, I mean, the business has changed a lot since I got into it back basically in the late 60s, early 70s. And for a lot of reasons, for, Black journalists and other Black people agitating for more people in the business. The Kerner Commission report, which said, if you want to get away from all of this violence that our cities have been seeing in the 60s, one thing you need to cover the African American community and other communities better, and you need to get some Black journalists. So there's been a lot of effort in that direction, sometimes on the part of the editors and publishers at various newspapers. So, at the time, I didn't consider myself sticking my neck out. I just was saying what I believe, just uttering common sense. And so I think, things are a lot better than they used to be. And it's Black History Month, so all you see everywhere is black, 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 black everywhere. But I'm sure that there are, one thing I definitely see, on the national news shows, the commentators bringing a lot of Black people. You have, a lot more Black people covering, the White House and events in Washington on network news. So there's been a lot of progress, and I'm sure there could be more.
Definitely. So now I'd like to ask you a couple questions considering the field of journalism at large. First off, and I think this is a question that'll be helpful to everyone here, what might surprise students who enter a professional newsroom, having come out of our organization, the Night News, who enter a professional newsroom expecting it to resemble ours?
Well, I think one thing that may have surprised students, even in my journalism class, was that at how hard you have to work to get a story, or to make a story happen. And I remember in one of my classes, I showed them a column that I did for Newsday some years ago. And I did the reporting for it over a couple of days. And it was, the column had 18 sources. And I think that often as student journalists think that if they're writing a story, and of course, you have to do reporting for columns just as you have to do for news stories. You have to, talk to people, do research. At least I did for mine. But some students think that you can call up one person and read a couple of clips and that you have a story. And often it just involves a lot more work than that. So I think that is one thing that students, college students, would definitely be surprised at. That it, even with a column, which is sometimes people think a column is just you have an opinion and you express your opinion, and you don't have to do any reporting. You don't have to reach out to experts on the subject, because as a journalist and as a columnist, which I was for a long time, you write about a lot of different subjects, but you cannot be an expert on all of them. You have to write about these subjects. You have this subject and you have 2 days or 1 day to write about it. And you have to really do a lot of research if you're going to be a good reporter or a good columnist.
I'm glad you say that, because Jason and I actually met with our interns yesterday, many of whom are thankfully here. And we were trying to impress upon them that it might not seem like we have a lot of time as students who are are practicing journalism essentially as or in their case, actually not as an extracurricular activity, but they're balancing their other academics and their journalism activities.
And probably a job as well.
And probably a job as well. And they think that they might think that they're being pressed for time with our current schedule as a biweekly publication, but that really is we really do benefit from the luxury of time when it comes to biweekly publications, because sometimes if a story breaks at noon, we'd be expected to have an article out in a matter of hours if this were actually a professional publication. And it's not something that's readily apparent to us at times, I would say.
Right. That you really, to get a story, you really have to, if you're on deadline, you really have to hustle for it. It's just a lot of work that goes into it. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to do that.
So, as I was saying before, you were a fierce advocate for journalism here at Queens College, even as the curriculum was maybe being kneecapped, but that's neither here nor there. Why did you feel that advocacy for journalism as a curriculum in particular was necessary when, say, English or media studies majors and minors exist here on campus? And this is something that I was asked when I was creating my interdisciplinary major in journalism, but I'd be curious to hear how you answer this question.
So to try to translate, are you asking why did I feel it was worth having a journalism program at Queens College? Is
having a journalism program was essential instead of having students interested in journalism major in, say, English or media studies.
Yeah, okay. I have to say, first of all, that when I was in college, I went to women's college in Massachusetts. They had one 2-credit journalism course, which I took, but that was it. And I do not think that journalism should be an undergraduate major. I do not. I think that people who are preparing to be journalists, you do better if you get a basic liberal arts education so that you know at least a little about a lot of different things, or at least familiar to those subjects, and that hopefully sort of a lot about your major. And then you bring the knowledge that you have in urban studies, English, political science, history. You bring that knowledge to journalism, So, but I do think it's certainly helpful with a journalism minor or a number of journalism courses to introduce students to the craft of journalism. Journalism is not really a profession in that, like if you're going to be a lawyer, if you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be a physical therapist, there's certain kinds of exams you have to take and certifications that you have. Journalists don't do that. Anybody theoretically can become a journalist. But I think that what the courses in a journalism minor do for you is to introduce you to the craft, show you how to write like a journalist, because journalism writing is very different from the kind of writing you would do for biology or sociology, very different, and just sort of whet your beak. And I think that's what we had a course that at one time called Beat the Press, where we talked about the principles that should underlie the practice of journalism, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what the goal of journalism is, and our reporting courses. And then we introduced the multimedia course, digital journalism, because everybody's doing multimedia as journalists these days. So I think, that's what I think, that, it's important to have journalism courses to introduce people to the craft and give them certain basic skills that they can develop further, but I don't think it should be an undergraduate major. You might go on to get a master's degree in journalism, and some people do, but I think the setup that we had was the proper one.
Thank you. I think, Jason, I think you would agree this is a good time now to turn it over to the Q&A portion of the panel. Jason, you're muted.
Sorry, yes, I think so. I think you should, yeah, let's hear from people. I think people have lots of questions.
So how we'll do this is Jason will be monitoring YouTube. Sammy will be looking at the chat. If anyone is interested in asking a question, either raise your hand on Zoom. I trust you all know how to do that. Or else type your question in the Zoom chat and Sammy will let me know. And then if you're on YouTube, I believe on Street, there's a stream chat where you can leave your questions. Like Jason said, if it doesn't make a difference to you, we would prefer that you ask your question directly and turn on your camera.
I'm looking at Sid. Sid, you're...
Hi, Professor McCarthy.
Good to see you. Where are you?
I am in New Hampshire for grad school.
At Dartmouth. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you. I wanted to stop by and, also hi, Johnny and Jason. It's nice to see you.
Hi, Sid, you made it.
I did, yes, after a quick tennis match, but Cheryl's the focus here. So I wanted to ask her a question. So I would love to know your thoughts on the current state of media. Do you think it's helping our society? Do you think it's worsening our democracy? What do you think?
Oh boy, that's a big question. Well, I was looking at, I said, one of the questions that they're probably going to ask me is, what kind of jobs are there in journalism? After I leave college, is it worth pursuing? And, like everybody else in the business, I've seen, it sort of implode in a lot of different ways. Certainly when I was coming to journalism, there were a lot of newspapers. Even if you wanted to be in TV or radio, you could start up a newspaper because there were a whole lot of newspapers. There are a lot fewer newspapers, these days because so many of them have closed, or a lot of them have gone to digital, so they still exist in a sense. But I was looking at the something put out by Career Services. This is at the CUNY, the Craig Newmark School of Journalism, the CUNY's Graduate School of Journalism, and looking at the places where their graduates have gone to work. And there are a lot of different places. So, there are still newspapers, there's still television. There's network television, there's local television. There are specialized kinds of online news sites. I was looking at there's an 124 News, an Israeli news feed, something called Intrafish Media, based in Norway, where the leading source of news about fishing and the fishing industry. You have sites like Politico that cover, politics and policy in the United States. Freakonomics, which covers economic issues. And you also have the nonprofit news organizations like ProPublica, which provide, investigative journalism, all kinds of stories that maybe, the existing newspapers don't have the resources to cover anymore. So they put the stories out there. Sometimes they feed them to the newspapers. So there are places to work, and you just have to find them, and they're far more on the internet than they used to be, so there are places you can work. And I think that when you're looking around for places to work, look at the news sites that you follow. And when you say, boy, I'd really like to work for BuzzFeed, or I really like to work for the New York Times, I'd really like to work for NBC News, and you pursue internships at those places, or you work up to those places. It just seems to me there are places that you can work if you want to be a journalist. And journalism is always being, I've said it's not a profession, it's a craft, it's a calling. It's sort of like, the ministry. You don't go into it because you expect necessarily fame and fortune or to earn a lot of money, but you go into it because it just excites you.
Thanks so much, Cheryl.
Sure. I hope you're not too cold up in New Hampshire.
Oh, it was -10 2 weeks ago, but I'm warming up now. We're at 40s. It's a good day.
Bundle up.
I will. Thanks.
Thank you, Sid. So just very quickly, I don't know if anyone didn't see it in the chat, Sid was my predecessor as editor-in-chief. I'm super grateful to him for being able to attend. Great leader, everyone who's worked with him admires as a leader and as a friend. So I just wanted to put that out there. Our next question is from Britt, who had her hand raised, and then we'll get to Manu's questions in the chat. Jason, I don't know if there are any questions on YouTube. No, okay, Britt, feel free to ask.
Hello. So my question is, how important do you think having a grad school degree is to getting a job in journalism?
Okay. In other words, should I try to go get a job or should I go to grad school?
Yeah.
This is sort of the question. I think it can work either way. There are people who go, right after college who go to grad school in journalism, and CUNY has it really has a great journalism school, and I would recommend it even over Columbia, which I had some experience teaching there, and costs a whole lot less than Columbia Journalism School. But I think, it can go either way. I never went to journalism school, for instance. I was accepted at journalism school, but got a master's in English instead. But you can go straight to journalism school, and I know that at CUNY's journalism school, it's great preparation. You get the basics. They make you do an internship. They help you get jobs, and their the graduates are working all kinds of places. At the same time, what you can do is if you can get an entry-level job in journalism or several entry-level jobs in journalism, and maybe be, sort of a few years into working at a newspaper, a TV station, whatever, and you feel like you've hit a sort of a dead end, what I said about, when you get into a rut, do something dramatic, do what you do to get out of it. And sometimes people will go to journalism school, and that just sort of, it maybe takes you to a different city. You get another level of, you learn some more things, you get some more contacts, and that can jumpstart, your career and get you to move on into a higher level of journalism. My husband did that. He was working for a small newspaper in Wichita, and he came to Columbia Journalism School and was able to get jobs writing financial news here in New York City. So it can work either way. It really can work either way. Either as something that you do right after college or something that you do to help jumpstart your career after you've already been working as a journalist.
Okay, thank you.
Have you thought about journalism?
I'm thinking about going to grad school right after college, and I really want to go to the Craig Newmark School of Journalism, for my graduate school degree.
Okay, it's a great school.
Thank you, Britt.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Manu in the chat. She says, first of all, I would thank you for being here. I can't ask with the mic because I'm in the library of Queens College. I would like to know if having a media studies and film studies majors can teach me enough to pursue a broadcasting journalism career.
It's hard for me to say, I'm not that familiar with the media studies program. And sometimes my sense is that it's more academic than the journalism program was. Whereas the journalism program, you know, you do daily journals, you write stories, you do videos. I guess you might do some of that in media studies. But the point is, you know, whatever your major is, I mean, your major may be in English, as mine was. Your major might be in psychology. One of my former students, I think she was majoring in nutrition. But then she decided she was interested in journalism. She took some journalism courses at Queens College, and then she decided she got accepted at a journalism school in Liverpool. Went to Liverpool, got a degree there, came back, did some freelancing, and a lot of freelancing here. And now she got a job. And like I said, the journalism jobs are different now from how they used to be. She's working for an outfit that, you know, markets, you know, computers and different kinds of technical stuff. And what she does is she writes reviews about, you know, the latest iPhone or the latest computer or the latest whatever. She writes reviews about them, and she does online videos, you know, talking about the advantages of this kind of equipment. So it's a different kind of job. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't even matter that much what your major is. If you're interested in pursuing journalism, then you pursue it. I mean, if you want to do television, get an internship with a local TV station. Two of my students at Queens got internships with NBC News, with the network. And I think both of them are working now. So it really doesn't even matter it doesn't matter. You should not be limited by whatever your major is.
Thank you. I honestly didn't see whether Sammy or Stavros raised their hand first, or who raised their hand first.
I think it was Stavros.
All right, that's fine. Stavros, you want to ask?
Yeah, of course. Thank you again for, you know, speaking with us. My question is, so as someone who's already had an internship in the past working for like an international news site, what advice can you give about, you know, taking all the articles or news stories that I've written and sort of assembling them into a portfolio or like a cohesive site for like potential employers in the future to look at? And like, could you also speak a little bit about personal branding?
I know nothing about personal branding, so we'll get that off of the table. I hear young people talk about branding all the time, and my brand this and my brand that. You know, I never tried to promote a brand. I just, you know, tried to get some experience and come up with some clips to show to somebody, and convince them that I was really and do internships, convince them I was really interested in the business. What kind of job are you looking for? What kind of outfit do you want to work for?
So I'm looking to do, you know, mostly journalism and also a little bit of content writing too. Like the past sort of articles I've written about were interviews. I also would do pieces on like entertainment or media, like things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, it sort of depends on who you are. What would be your ideal place, your fantasy place to work?
Anywhere really, just to get experience.
Yeah. And the international, what was the place where you did your internship? You said it was the International News Organization?
Yes, it was called Greek Reporter. So it was international, and I would write about like different topics, whether it was like politics, business, current events, news, entertainment, things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would so you have what sounds like a decent selection of clips, and I would just choose your best ones. I mean, if you, for instance, if you were looking to work for a business site, and there are a lot of business internet news sites. In fact, when I left Newsday, when Newsday sort of finally closed down its New York operation, a lot of people were able to go to business sites because those were the booming news sites. Bloomberg hired a lot of people, for instance. If you're looking to go to a business site and you have some business articles, but I mean, basically, I would just choose what you feel are your strongest articles and send them around to, and you might have done, maybe you did some video, I don't know if you did some videos, but send them around to people that you're interested in working for. Job coaches, I know for a long time, spent a whole lot of time on, and people spend a whole lot of money on perfecting their resumes, you know, doing the resume over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, there is nothing that difficult about putting together a decent resume. Just get some samples and update them with your stuff. You know, so that's what I would say. Just send out your best stuff to the places that you're interested in and have a decent resume. And there's no particular formula, I think, for writing a great resume, although people would tell you that it's so complicated that you have to pay somebody $1,500 to show you how to write a resume and put together a portfolio. It's really not that complicated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, and good luck with your job search.
So our next question will be from Sammy.
Hello.
Hi, Sammy.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm actually the secretary at the Night News.
Okay.
My question is sort of like Stavros's question. I interned last summer for the Brian Lehrer Show and did production working with live radio and podcasting. And I'm just wondering, what advice would you give on maintaining and also building connections, specifically post-internship? Like, how can students reap, the benefits of internships and experiences that they've had in the past?
Well, there's no doubt that the best way to get into the business, the best entree into the business, is through an internship, because it gives you contacts and it gives you something to show. I mean, if you sort of like start at the basics, my first experience with journalism was in college. My high school did not have a student newspaper. So I took that little 2-credit course at college. I worked on the student newspaper, which gave me my first clips. And then I did an internship after my junior year at the Boston Globe, based on the clips that I had given them from the student newspaper. So then you get more clips. And then my senior year, I wrote to I had 2 days that I didn't have classes. So I wrote to the newspaper in the nearby town and told them I was interested in journalism. I had 2 free days. Could I come and work for them? The worst, you offer yourself, the worst thing anybody can tell you is no. And sometimes they tell you yes. And they said yes. So I went to work for the Holyoke Transcript for 2 days a week. I think they paid me $25 a day. And I wound up doing a piece about the terrible housing condition in the town of Holyoke. Okay, so now I have the clips from there as well. And I applied for an internship at the Boston Globe, which I did right after I graduated. And then I went away and did a little graduate school in California, didn't like it. So I contacted the Globe, back at the people at the Globe, and said, will you take me back as a reporter? And that's how I got my first job at the Boston Globe, based on, you build up the clips, the contacts over time, build up the clips over time. And I'd work there. And they said, come back. And I think they hired me back at $135 a week as a reporter for the Globe. And that's sort of how you do it. I think, as I said, I think the the Queens College students who had internships at NBC News, you go there, they get to know you. The main thing you want to do is make yourself, I don't want to say ingratiate yourself, but make yourself indispensable. Show people that you're really enthusiastic. If there's a reporter there that you admire, if there's a producer there that you admire, talk to them. Tell me, how do you ask them questions? How do you do this? Can I go out with you one day and on a story, and make people understand that you have some energy and some interest. And then, when you're looking to come on, for a real job, not just pass an internship, they're more likely to say yes than no. I hope that's helpful. I hope that's helpful to you.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Jason, would you like to say something?
Well, I think there was a question in the chat, and then I'll ask my question.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think Alessio was asking about avenues for people interested in covering entertainment, where they should turn first.
Yeah. I don't have any good information on that, but I would say look at the entertainment outfits that, the ones that you enjoy, the ones that you watch on television, the people who publish articles that you read, who do videos that you look at, and try to get in with them, express your interest, write to them, email them, send them the clips, the videos that you have to try to get your foot in the door. And when you're starting out in journalism anyway, you tend to do it in sort of quick hops, skips, and jumps. Some people might go to a newspaper or a place and stay there for a long time, but often, you stay for a short while, and then when you see some other opportunity to come up and you have some stories that you've done that support, your resume to go to the new place, you try to go to the new place. I think my advice would be to try the places that you go to look for entertainment news, and seek those out, see if you can get in the door. And that would be the way that you do it. Pretty much in the, certainly in the TV and entertainment industry, everybody comes in at the bottom anyway. You have to come in at the bottom and just sort of work your way up. You have to go to the jobs where you're treated badly, and then work up to the jobs where they treat you really well. So that would be my advice to you.
Okay, I have a question that's about advice for students working on kind of news that's local to CUNY and Queens College. And Sid one time quoted you to me, and this is like a game of telephone, so if this is wrong, you can correct me, or Sid can. Sid once said to me that you told him, if you want the truth, don't go to a politician, go to a journalist.
Yeah.
And so it can be tricky for students covering college news, because they feel like, if they're sensitive topics, they feel, there are these authority figures, and how can they write about them in ways that are fair but critical if there are problems. And I'll give you an example. Right now we have a couple of people working on stories about the fact that we've just come back to in-person campus classes, and the college really wasn't ready. And so, for example, students stood in lines that sometimes were 2 or 3 hours long to scan their IDs to show that they had vaccination.
Really?
Or like people are waiting an hour for the shuttle bus, that kind of thing. And I wonder if you have advice for students who are writing about the institution where they're a student, and how they navigate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that can be tricky because basically the job of journalists, there are a lot of responsibilities, but basically is to speak truth to power. Certainly, mainstream who's the power? The power is can be the federal government, it can be the local government, it can be the state government, it can be all kinds of big business, and on a student newspaper, the power is generally the administration.
Mhm.
And sometimes, to a certain extent, the administration controls you, hands down the rules that you have to follow. But I think it's really the job of a student newspaper to tell the truth about what's going on the campus. And if the administration is doing something that it shouldn't be doing, to tell the truth about that. And what are your sources? I mean, there are all kinds of, your sources are students who are having these unfortunate experiences. They're going to be faculty members who really want to tell the truth because they're as frustrated as the students are about it. One thing I mentioned to Sid was that I thought the Professional Staff Congress, which is the union that represents faculty and staff at the CUNY schools, might be a good source of information, because basically their job, they're always pissed off about something, and the PSC members at CUNY, whoever the representatives are, they're going to be pissed off about something and really going to want to talk to you about that. I mean, sometimes the administration will talk to you. If you ask for an interview, sometimes they will blow you off. But how can they hurt you? I mean, they can't, they're not going to expel you. They're not going to take away your scholarship. They're going to kick you out of school. So you should not be no reason to be intimidated by that. Just try to get the truthful information from the sources that will talk to you and provide you with, trust, information that you can depend on. I know in the past, the night news, because you still get your money from student government, student fees. And I know there was some difficulty in the past when you ran afoul of the student association. There was some backlash in terms of, cutting your funding. But now that you are online, that should not be as much of a problem, right? Because you don't have to pay printing fees, all of that paper, all that stuff. You're online, you don't have to worry about that so much. Where are we? Did I disappear?
We're all here.
Okay, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, you can't see us?
I can see you. I can see you.
Okay. It doesn't look like there are any questions left in the chat. If anyone does have a question, feel free to. Oh, Sabrina. Do we have time for another question, Jason?
Yeah, one more.
Perfect.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm a reporter intern for the Night News. This is my first semester. Anything first with journalism. This is my year.
All right.
And I've just been loving hearing everything about your experience, all that stuff. I think my question is more kind of basic, but it really goes towards, I know hearing everything about journalism, grad school career can be very intimidating for people who are just starting out, or maybe they can sell themselves short, like, well, I'm not like this person, or comparing ourselves to other more seasoned journalists. I just wanted to know your perspective from already being in the industry and probably seeing newcomers come up. What is the reality between what careers are really willing to hire versus what we think they're willing to hire? Because I know sometimes we might not go for something because we're intimidated, but what is the mind really working behind someone who is already a professional? What are you guys looking for in terms of a new journalist coming into?
Yeah, I tell you what I'm looking for, like in my journalism classes, some people are in there just for the general education credit. They're in there for, I don't know, English credit. Probably in, say, in a class of 25, there might be 3 people who I see as having potential to be journalists. And it's really about drive. I mean, it's really just about drive, whether you are interested enough and energetic enough to do the work. I tell you, sir, I had a student in one of my introductory journalism classes, and I think he was an accounting major, had no real interest in pursuing journalism. But if you gave him, if he had a story to do, had a feature story to do, he just really put a lot of effort into it. He pursued the sources. I think I sent them out to cover an event, and this was some kind of event down at Bryant Park about women's history anyway. But it was a day-long event, and there was a parade, and there were speakers, and he stayed there for the entire day, and he interviewed a lot of the different people, and he wrote this article. And I always get my students to I give them criticism on it, and then they have to redo it. And he redid it the way I asked him to redo it. And what I'm saying is that, students who want to be journalists, you just have the drive to be a journalist. You have the drive to go out and do the stories. You have the drive to work at certain news organizations. You have the drive to get clips and to get good clips, to do video, and to do good video, and to do them over until they are good. And that is what you are looking for. You hope that they'll be able to write well, but I've known some students who were really poor writers, but they just had the drive, and it was drive enough to get them into graduate school in journalism. It was drive enough to get them to work for several mainstream news outlets. It's really just drive, which means the willingness to do the work and the willingness to produce. And that, more than anything else, is what I think it will help you in all kinds of professions, but certainly in journalism.
Thank you so much.
I hope that was helpful.
It was helpful.
This whole panel has been helpful, Sheryl.
Oh, good.
So I believe
and
that's all.
Another thing I want to say, I was talking to a young woman who she was just starting off working on a journalism degree at Columbia, and she asked me if I had any advice for students. And one advice I have is to leave town. Leave town. So many, like I left my hometown a long time ago. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I left town to go to college in Massachusetts, and I've been around in Massachusetts and in Baltimore and Atlanta and back to New York for a long time. But a lot of students, they just especially students who are in New York. I mean, you're already in New York and you don't want to go anyplace else. And so you hang around here looking for a job, and you can't get one because these are high level jobs. This is where you come for the big time. Go to New Jersey, go to Memphis, go to Minnesota, go down south. One of my previous students who's on the night news and covered sports, Will Salmon, went down to Alabama and Georgia covering, he was a sports writer, covering, high school sports and college sports. And now he's working for the I think it's all the athletic is the and that's a major sports website. But if you got journalists bounce around a lot, and you have to have that sense of adventure, that you're willing to go to not only meet people, write about subjects you don't know about, but go to places you don't know anything about. And if you're not willing to do that, the likelihood of a career is not as great. All the journalists that I've worked with have bounced around all over the country. And the idea is that eventually you settle on a place where you want to be, a job you want to be, and a place where you have a good social life. You're trying to line all those ducks up in a row, but you have to be willing to move around to situations, to places that are a little uncomfortable to you. But that's a piece of advice that I give you. Be willing to leave town.
That's great advice. I mean, honestly, like being driven by a sense of adventure is so key to making a career that's satisfying in any area, really. But as a journalist, you really need it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good sentiment for us to end on today. So, Sheryl, again, everyone here, we all can't thank you enough for coming to indulge us in enlightening conversation. So
it was a pleasure. If there's anything else I can do, after I left Queens, I've been gone for 2 years, but Sid and I stayed in touch for at least a year, and forcing me to read through those entire copies of the night news and try to critique all the stories in them. But I enjoyed being in touch, and it's great to be in, to get to talk to you again today, and to know that you're still doing journalism.
Absolutely, the feeling is mutual. Jason, any parting words for us?
Just to say that I'm really glad that we have this connection alive, and I hope that one day we can have an event on campus in person and invite you for that. And thank you so much, because this was excellent.
Thank you for inviting me. Go forth and do good journalism.